Mr. Kip Sorensen, what's up, brother? It's great to see you after a 2-week hiatus. I'm looking a little darker
Yeah,
than you, which is
I
not usually
know.
the case.
I noticed like little tan,
Yeah.
all the Mainers are going to lose their mind with someone with a slight tan hanging around.
Mainers call anybody from out of state or from another area, you're either a flatlander or you're from away. So with the golden glow I have going on right now, they will definitely know that I am from away, especially in the midst of the
From
snowstorm we're
away.
dealing with today.
What's a flat lander? What's that?
I don't even know why they call it that because I was
Because Maine's kind of flat. So,
flat relative to Utah, which is where I am.
yeah, interesting. Huh.
Oh, maybe they're like, what is it on
Mainers.
Dumb and Dumber? I thought the Rockies would be a little bit more rocky than this. That John Denver's full of shit, man.
Oh, that's a good show. I need to bring that
Great
up through the
show.
archives. Yeah.
It's a great show. So yeah, we've been trying to
Well,
introduce our kids to some various classics, and Dumb and Dumber was definitely on that list, including
yeah.
Wayne's World. That was on the list. And then
Wayne's
there's some
World.
other more serious ones. Like Braveheart, we watched not too long ago together.
Classic.
Gladiator. What else? Legends of the Fall is a great movie. I don't know if they've watched that one yet, but yeah, we try to introduce them to some of these
Yeah.
really good ones.
We did the same thing and we grabbed some like childhood favorite movies that we liked. And then we're like, man, this is inappropriate, right? Like I was
Oh,
like,
for
why was my
sure.
parents let me watch these shows? It was
For
really
sure.
funny. Yeah.
We were watching
I'm trying
Shrek
to
the other day and noticed how much sexual innuendo was in that.
totally.
But if is
Yeah.
you got to
It's
ask,
an
like, is it
adult
really?
cartoon. Kids have no
That's right.
idea. Yeah.
And that's the thing. Is it really inappropriate for kids if they don't get it? Maybe not. I think it's just deployed to make sure that the parents are somewhat entertained because they're the ones paying for the movie tickets to get their kids
Yeah.
there. So if it's not entertaining for the adults, the adults are like, screw that. I'm not going to that.
Totally. I love
Yeah.
watching Shrek. I think it's funny.
It's
What's a
hilarious.
childhood story where the kids find a shipwreck and it's like in the mountain? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Oh, that's good. Are you talking about Goonies?
Goonies. Yeah. I
Come on.
love
How do you
Goonies as a
forget
kid.
Goonies?
I know. I don't know why I forgot the title, but I love Goonies. And we were watching that
Great
with our
movie.
kids. They're cursing the whole time. I'm like,
Oh,
all right,
yeah.
kids, no cursing, but I'm like, this is a great show. And they're like, your
We
parents let
watch
you watch this?
we watch occasionally old Looney Tunes, or you know what is the worst movie?
Well,
Pinocchio.
oh yeah. Yeah.
I
Pinocchio
mean,
is
I
horrible.
remember when I was a kid, I was scared of Pinocchio. Number one, that movie was scary. Eaten by the whale, and then he gets kidnapped by, I think, a fox and a bear, if I remember right. And then they get taken to this groomer island where they're grooming all these little boys, and they call them jackasses. They're literally turning them into donkeys. And then they're all smoking. I'm like, this is a horrible, horrible show. They're trapped. Pinocchio's trapped in a cage with these two pedophiles. Like, this is a horrible, horrible show. Oh, oof, weird. That's Disney's
Land
intro
Bef-
into woke ideology, I suppose.
oh my
Land Before
gosh.
Time.
No, Never Ending Story. I
Oh
watched that
yeah,
like a couple years ago. The worst movie of all time. I loved it
really?
as a kid. As an adult, it is miserable.
I just
The
remember
plot
that
doesn't even make
white
sense.
dragon. I think it was that he
Yeah, the
flies on, if I remember.
flying dog.
Yeah, flying dog. That's what it is. Yeah. All
Uh,
right. Well, guys, maybe
anyhow,
maybe what you can do is you could submit your favorite childhood movies, and then we could come up with some sort of archive to introduce our children to. Pinocchio will not be on the list. Neither will Never
yeah,
Ending
the
Story.
child approved movies for Order of Man.
That's
Yeah.
right. That's right.
All right.
All right, brother.
So
Let's
we're
get into
gonna
it today.
Yeah, we're going to field questions from our Facebook group. That's facebook.com/group/orderman. Join us there. Paul Beam, expectations. I don't understand how we can have standards, but no expectations.
Well, I'm not sure that no expectations is appropriate. I may have said that
Yeah.
in the past, so let me give some nuance to that. If you're going to have expectations for certain people, then they have to be stated and agreed upon.
Yeah.
We've talked a lot about covert contracts. So for example, if you expect your wife to do certain things around the house or to behave a certain way or to respond to you a certain way, and yet you haven't communicated that clearly to her and she hasn't agreed upon that expectation, that's where I would say no, you shouldn't have that expectation because you haven't been fair to the other party. But Kip, if you and I are in a business agreement, and we are in this context, we're friends, but in this context, a business agreement, then there are some expectations that I have of you. And I've communicated those expectations, and you've communicated your expectations to me. And if either one of us fail to meet those expectations, it's not a surprise of what those are. And of course, there's going to be consequences to that. So we have standards about the way that we perform. We have standards about the way that we show up and what we do and how we communicate. And here's the set expectation. And it is what it is. Now, there's other people that I don't think we should have expectations of, that we just don't have the right to have expectations of. You know, like I don't expect people. One of the things I've been doing over the past, I would say 2 months, really, really hard, is hitting the gym very heavily. And I don't have any expectations about my friends should go to the gym, or if I go to the gym, then the people there should do workouts the way that I approve or deem appropriate. It's not really my place to have an expectation of them. All that I can worry about is my own personal expectation and agreements with myself and the standard I hold myself to. I'll give you an example. I was doing some reps this morning. I can't remember what it was. Maybe it was some weighted, front squats or something. I can't remember. And I was doing these reps and I lost track. I was supposed to do 12 of them and I lost track of them. And I could have just finished up and say, yeah, I think I got 10, but I did 2 more. Maybe I did more. I don't really know. I lost track, but I know for sure I hit what I was supposed to hit. I probably did a little bit more, but I'd rather do that than not do enough. And would anybody catch me on that? Is there anybody in the gym to critique that? Is Johnny Loretti, who's my fitness trainer and nutritionist, would he know about that? No, but I do. And so I'm really, really working hard to hold myself to my own personal standard. So I hope that answers the question. But yeah, there are people that you should have expectations. I have expectations of my children. I have expectations of you. I have expectations of my wife. I have expectations of other business partners. And all of that is communicated clearly. And if I don't, then I have no right to be upset when they fail to meet my covert contract that I've created in my mind and not shared with them.
Totally. One resource on this that's super great that I think he's done an amazing job, and he's been on the podcast, John Gary Bishop. He has an entire section of his book, I think, around just expectations. And he latches onto the area that, not on the communication, which I totally agree with, but eventually, right, there becomes a time where we had expectations. Maybe there are people outside of our realm of control. We have expectations around how the government is, but we're not in a position necessarily to communicate those expectations per se. Or maybe we do communicate and those expectations aren't met. His premise is learn to let go of them so you can deal in reality. Because sometimes we have expectations of the way things should go, and we won't let go of it because, well, Ryan, I shouldn't have to, right? I shouldn't have to be dealing with this in my life. I won't let go of the expectation. I shouldn't have to deal with these struggles. It shouldn't be this difficult. And we'll hold on to it so much that we don't deal in reality. And so I totally agree. Have expectations, but also learn to let go of them and deal with what is so. And sometimes our expectations, I don't know, there's so much, I don't know if it's ego or the desire to want to be right, but sometimes we'll just hold on to them and not deal in reality.
Yeah. Well, and I think you brought up a key phrase, should not. So it's, that you have expectations of people, whether it's healthy or unhealthy. You're dealing in expectations when you say should and should not about other people. Yeah. Kip should do this. My wife should do that. My kids should not do this. Those are expectations that you have. And again, sometimes that's appropriate. My kids should not backtalk their mother. They know that. That's an expectation. And so we talk about that. And then here's something. If I see another kid backtalking his mom, well, he shouldn't do that. What? Like, why would I have that expectation of that other child? I've noticed that as I've tried to let go of this need to control, I think that's where it comes from. Life has just got better. I'm happier. I'm more carefree. I can focus on more important matters because I'm not worried about what that kid who I have nothing to do with should and should not do.
Yeah.
Here it applies in order of man. look, I can tell you guys, a man should not, a man should do this, a man should do that. Look, I have my own shoulds and should nots that I need to work on, clearly.
Yeah, totally.
And I communicate this stuff to you guys. But at the end of the day, like, if you come to me and you're like, well, Ryan, you said this, but I don't do that. I don't care. It's not my expectation that you do it the exact same way as me. All that I want to do is share some victories, share some setbacks, and hopefully it inspires you to live a more meaningful life. But it's your obligation to take what works and leave what doesn't, and run it through your own filter in your own life. I really don't have an expectation as to whether or not you do something that I suggest. It doesn't matter to me.
Yeah. And I just wanted to point out there's some serious things in life that this shows up in, right? If we're dealing with death or disease or an unhealthy family member, sometimes we'll latch onto those and say, I have this expectation. I shouldn't have to deal with this, right? I shouldn't have my father pass away, or my kids shouldn't have this sickness or these difficulties. Well, but they are. Yeah. So let it go.
Well, and I think that's where, and we're beating a dead horse now, but I think that's where your own expectations come in, because that's going to help you navigate those things. So for example, if you have a loved one pass away and you worry about your locus of control, which is how you handle yourself, then you're going to be able to navigate that successfully, including helping other people navigate it. Or if you're going through a breakup or a divorce, or a layoff or economic hardship, there's things beyond your control. And I'm not saying it makes it, well, no, I think I am saying it makes it easier if you focus on your own expectations. So the world could be crumbling around you. And if you say, hey, you know what, in these dark and destructive and challenging times, my expectation or my standard is that I show up like this kind of man, I think that is going to help you handle it more easily than if you put it all on your wife or your kids or the economy or the president or something that's completely beyond your control. So put the expectations on your shoulders of how you'll perform. I think that's a better approach to it.
Dallin Michael, what kind of rites of passage can I do with my daughters? Or is that my wife's job? The sons I have ideas that feel natural, but the girl I'm struggling with.
Yeah, I've thought a lot about this. I don't think that it needs to be different for your daughter. I really don't. I've been toying around with the idea that maybe it's more important for your daughter. I'll give you an example. Martial arts. I spent some time with a good friend in Costa Rica over the past week and a half. His name's Rick Trimmer. He's been on the podcast. He's a good friend of mine. And
just a few episodes back.
Yeah. And he also, him and his wife happen to be business partners with Revitalized Womanhood, which is a very cool program, specifically focused on women, similar to what we're doing here with Order of Man. Anyways, the reason I bring his name up is I think he's 6'5". He's a very imposing, intimidating figure. And we were talking about safety as he travels. Him and his family travel extensively. And like I said, we were down in Costa Rica. And he said, here's some things. I don't go to unsafe places. But he said something interesting. He said, people don't mess with me. He's 6'5". He's a fun-loving, happy, friendly jokester. But I would, like, if I'm trying to victimize somebody, I'm not going to mess with a guy that's 6'5".
You're skipping that guy.
Right. Like, I'm going to go to the next guy or maybe even the woman, right?
Yeah.
Not the guy at all, because I'm looking for the path of least resistance. I'm looking for the easy target. Well, women are easier targets than men. It's just, look, people are going to say that's misogynistic or that's sexist or whatever. It's the reality. Okay. They're smaller. They're easier to handle if needs be. I think generally, I know this might get me into some trouble. Women generally tend to be a little bit more naive than men do generally.
They're more loving. They're less skeptical. Yeah,
right.
Totally.
So I think if you're talking about martial arts, for example, it might be more important that a woman learn, or your daughter in this case, learns that than a man. I'm not saying man shouldn't. I'm saying it might be more important that she does than your son does.
Yeah.
Or it might be more important that she knows how to change a tire than your son does, because she's the one who's at risk if her tire blows out on the side of the road and she's all by herself and she's changing her tire on the highway. She's at greater risk than a man is in any circumstance. So I would suggest that all the things that we talk about with rite of passages, with hardship and challenge and struggle and adversity, and those things should be introduced to your daughter just as much, if not more so, than your sons. The only difference is that when you talk about, is that your wife's job? No, it's not her job to offer rites of passages, because women don't offer hardship in that relationship. That's not their role. That's the man's role. It's your job to introduce hardship and struggle and toil. Think about it on a small micro level. When your daughter's learning to ride her bike, she's what, 4, 5, 6 years old. She's learning to ride her bike and she falls. What does the mom do? Runs over. Oh, sweetie. Oh, are you okay? Oh, let me brush off the dirt. Let me get the rocks out of it. Let me kiss your boo-boo. Let me get you a Band-Aid. And that's the mom's job. That's not wrong, by the way. It's a nurturing, loving approach to concern for her well-being. The man says, hey, dust it off. I know it hurts. I know it's a little bloody. Just wipe it off, get the gravel out of there, and put your helmet back on right, and, get back on the bike and encourage her to push past the fear and the pain. And that's the man's job. So it's the man's job to offer the rites of passages because it offers hardship. It's your wife's job to make sure that she turns into a fine young woman, a beautiful, lovely woman. She's supposed to be teaching her femininity. She's supposed to teach her how to nurture and how to nourish and how to support and how to love. That's your wife's job. And your job is to offer the hardship and the fortitude to get through those challenges.
Yeah, I like it. Although I have a hard time imagining Asia going, oh, it's okay. She's the same as me. We're like,
for sure.
Get back up, you pansy.
But let's be honest, that's masculine energy.
Totally.
I mean, and I'm not saying she's masculine, but but
she has masculinity in her, just like we have feminine.
Of course. Of course.
Totally. Like it. Tyler Henderson. I work out 5-6 times a week, drink plenty of water throughout the day, and I'm very intentional about how I eat. Additionally, I get about 7 hours of sleep a night on average. Caffeine intake isn't insanely high, but I do drink a cup of coffee in the morning and in the afternoon after lunch. You're making us look bad here, Tyler. That said, I still tend to get pretty tired throughout the day. Any tips on maintaining better energy levels? Maybe some things that I can work well for, or that has worked well for you.
Yeah. So I'm going to give you like a physiological answer. Well, I guess they're both physiological, but I'll give you the physiological answer and then I'll give you the mental answer. So let's just address the physiological first. Go get your hormones checked. Go get your blood worked up. Yeah. Do a workup. Figure out where your testosterone levels are. Figure out how that's all regulated, so that you can see, your testosterone might be critically low. Mine was in the 200s. It's been a while, and I haven't checked it. I don't take testosterone. I did for a little bit, and I might do it in the future. But I feel more energetic. I'm getting bigger. I'm leaning out, but I wanted to try it by, number one, I stopped drinking alcohol. That was huge. I don't know if you drink alcohol, but that was huge. And I was shocked, completely shocked how quickly I lost weight and my energy levels went up when I stopped drinking. Amazing. So there's that. But my testosterone was in the 200s, but I've done a lot of different things, including diet, exercise, again, stop drinking. And I need to go get my blood worked up now, because I bet it's higher, because I feel like I have more energy, more stamina, more focus, more control. So I would definitely say get your hormones checked. So that's the physiological. The mental side of it, I would ask yourself, what is my purpose in life? What is it that I'm passionate about? What is my purpose? What things do I see in life? What are hills that I'm willing to die on? Like, what causes am I fighting for? What gets me excited outside of being a husband to my wife, being a father to my children? What is it that really, really drives me? And if you can't answer those questions, we really got to dive deep into figuring out why that's the case. Because I know a lot of guys, and I can see it in their eyes when I drive by them on the road. They're 50 pounds overweight. They're sitting in their wife's minivan. They're going to a job that they hate. And you can see the desperation and torment in their eyes. I don't want that for you guys. So I would suggest that there might be some deep work here needed to figure out, are you living and stepping into God's plan and purpose for you? Because if you're not, no wonder you're tired. No wonder you're exhausted. No wonder there's nothing that gets you going or revved up throughout the day.
I
Hormones,
like it.
mentality of purpose.
Jeremy Clay, how to stay plugged in. I have had mentors, etc., for most of my life, but there are periods of life I unplug and I won't say I don't listen to them, but self-thinking wins, and that never goes as good as listening to the counsel. Any thoughts?
Plugged in to what exactly? Like he's
How
saying
to stay plugged
self-thinking,
in.
but
Yeah.
I actually think I believe that self-thinking, which if I don't know what he's saying, but I would say is like intuition, maybe, he's saying listen to counsel.
Yeah, maybe.
I'd actually say listen more to intuition than listen to counsel. I'm not saying don't listen to good, wise, credible counsel, but every time I've followed my gut, things have gone well. Every time I've deviated from that, things have not gone so well.
Yeah.
So at a core, I would say, no, do follow your gut and then figure out from your counsel how to take action and navigate what your gut is telling you. That's what I would say. But also read the question one more time, because I had one more thought and I took a note, but now I kind of lost track. Read the question one more time for me.
And I'm maybe I'm messing up, but it's a little hard to read here. So how to stay unplugged, how to stay plugged in, question mark. I have had mentors and etc. for most of my life, but there are periods of life I unplug and I won't say I don't listen to them, but self-thinking wins, and that never goes as good as listening to counsel. Any thoughts?
So I think what I'm hearing is that he's getting stuck in his own head, and it's negative. It's like, you can't do this. You're not good enough. What makes you think you deserve this? Who are you to ... Those are all thoughts that all of us have.
Yeah.
You can entertain them for a minute and then just decide to shut them off. I think about those things every day when I go through my failures, my setbacks, my challenges. I think to myself, who are you? Who are you to do this? Who are you to tell men how to be men? Who are you to run this organization? What makes you think you're special? And the reality is all of that's true. Like, who am I? Who am I to tell guys what they should do when I'm keenly aware of my own struggles and my own faults? And I don't entertain those thoughts for long, because what I say to myself is, who am I not to? Like, who am I not to share my struggles and my faults? Who am I not to share the things that have worked well for me that might inspire one other man to do something in his life that's going to move him in a positive direction? Or who am I not to hold up a warning sign and say, don't do this. This is what I did and it didn't work. And I suggest that you don't go this route, that you go that route over there. Who am I not to do that? What a shame if I cower and I hide and I slink away into obscurity because I'm so worried about my fragile ego that I can't take my lessons of failure and setback and victory and translate those or gift those to somebody else. Who are you not to do that? So sure, if you want to entertain those thoughts, if you need to let them ruminate in your mind a little bit and bounce around in your mind, give them an expiration date. Hey, look, feeling down in the dumps, I'm going to take an hour and I'm going to unplug from my mentors or my emails or whatever, or I'm going to go on vacation. I'm going to take a 3-day vacation or even a staycation, and I'm going to think about this. And then I'm back to work. That stuff expires. I'm not going to sit around and wallow in my own self-pity. And one thing that's worked well for me when I do that is I don't let it just bounce around in my brain. You got to get it out. You got to get it a release valve. And one way you might be able to do that is by journaling. So go ahead and take out a journal and say, I don't feel worthy. I don't feel good about myself. I don't feel successful. Like, write all of it down, because now you're purging the toxicity from your mind. You got to get it out of your brain and just dump it somewhere. And maybe you just take that piece of paper and at the end of every day or every gripe session you have, you rip it up, you throw it away, you burn it, you do whatever, but at least it's out of your mind. And don't believe for a second that you're different. The most successful people in the world have these same exact thoughts. You're not different. You're not broken and you're not doing it wrong. We just need to move you to phase B, which is, okay, maybe you aren't good enough right now. Well, what can you do to be better? Maybe you aren't a great husband, and that sucks to wrestle with. So what are you going to do about it? Okay, maybe you're 50 pounds overweight and you don't feel confident because you look in the mirror and you can't even see your dick anymore. Okay, like that sucks. And now, so that's phase B. What are you going to do about it? And now you get to work. Because I'll tell you what, I've never felt bad in the midst of actively working to improve myself. Maybe before, maybe after, but not while I'm actively doing it.
I like the idea of just finish the thought.
Yes.
Finish the thought and come up with a conclusion. So even if you're thinking negative about yourself and you're kind of beating yourself up, okay, deal with it. And then what? So that's how I feel. So what are you going to do about it? Finish the thought. We need to stop being lazy with the thoughts that enter our minds and follow them to a conclusion, or determine what the conclusion is, or to your point, what's the action? What are you going to do about it? Mm-hmm. It's when we don't do that everyone goes, oh, you're so negative. It's so bad for you. Yeah, it's only bad if you don't do something. It could be really great if you actually have it cause action. So take some action out of it.
Yeah, I think guilt and shame and remorse and even a guilty conscience, I think that's healthy. Like everybody says, oh, you shouldn't feel ashamed. Oh, you shouldn't be embarrassed. Oh, you shouldn't. Why? Why, if you've done some horrible things, why should you not feel ashamed about that? That's God's way of saying, hey, that's
you're
not
out
right.
Of integrity. Yeah.
What you're doing isn't right. Let's say you participate in it. Let's say you step out on your wife and you feel sorrow and grief and remorse about that. Well, yeah. Why shouldn't you feel that way? You dishonored your wife and you failed on a commitment to her. You should feel bad about that. So then it not drives you into pit of despair, but drives you into doing something better. Totally. That's the purpose of it.
And here's if you don't mind me just psychoanalyzing a little bit, what we do is we'll put a label about who we are. So that way it draws and I really think we do it because it means there's nothing for me to do. It's also very lazy. So if I make a mistake and I go to the position of, let's say I'm overweight, I'm such a lazy ass, right? If I go to the area of label, then it's like, well, and that's just who I am. That's just
where I am. Yep.
Can't do nothing about it. But if my messaging is, I have fat, I'm out of shape, then I can have a conclusion of, what are you going to do about it? But if I give myself the label, then it's just like, it's a form of throwing my hands up and there's nothing I can do. And what's unfortunate, and it's really disempowering because now you've taken it to the whole extreme level. You've identified yourself and your self-worth based upon addressing the issue, which would draw action. So just be mindful of kind of those labels that we put on ourselves. It's really a form of washing our hands of responsibility.
I think that's true. One example that's specifically accurate in my life is alcoholism. I could very easily say that I'm an alcoholic. And I've been to meetings where people have been sober for decades, 20, 25, 30 years. One in particular, 30 years. And she still introduces herself as, I'm an alcoholic. No, you're not. Are you susceptible to alcohol in a way that other people are not? Sure.
Yeah.
I'll give you that. Totally. I am. Like with my mentality and my personality, if you give me a drink, I'm having all the drinks as soon as possible. That is my nature. That is my personality. That is the way my body is made up. Am I an alcoholic? Yes, if I choose to be. Or I could say, you know what? I'm not going to do that. I'm going to refrain from that. I'm going to control myself. I'm going to exercise some discipline. So am I susceptible to it in a way that other people are not? Yes, I would say yes. But I'm not going to define myself that way because I have the power to do something about it.
Yeah, I like it.
All right. What's next?
Peter Zeffo. When does it stop? When does it stop hurting? Between jiu-jitsu 2 to 3 days a week. I was like going negative, right? Between jiu-jitsu 2 to 3 days a week, light weightlifting, and a daily walking and running regimen. Something hurts all the time. At 48 years old, is this just the cost of trying to get and stay in shape?
I think you're looking at pain as a negative. I will tell you, I always have a low level of pain somewhere. It's my joints, or sometimes my hip, or, you know, my lower back, or I wake up in the morning and I'm like, oh, even now I'm hunched over right now. So even now I can feel myself. I'm like, open yourself up, man. Because jiu-jitsu is all about like balling up, right?
Yeah.
It's like open, like nobody's trying to attack you right now. Open yourself up. Okay. Open up. That's something I have to do. And that actually feels pretty good right now as I'm doing it. Yeah, but I always have a low level of pain and I like it.
Me too.
I actually like it. Maybe I'm a masochist, but I'm like, hell yeah, my elbow hurts. Awesome. That's because I did something with it, or somebody put me in an arm bar and I learned not to be arm barred anymore. Like, that's awesome. Or you know what? I held it a little too long, but I escaped. But I maybe should have let go. I'm like, no, like I escaped. I'm good. Right. Or if I get a black eye or a bruise, I'm like, hell yeah, that's awesome. Like, I'm keeping the bruise because that means something happened today.
Yes.
Now, I'm not talking about injury. Okay. Injury is different, but there's always a low level. When I'm at the gym and I'm like, oh, that hurts. I'm not saying I'm going to get myself injured, but I can feel the difference between stop doing that because you're going to injure yourself, or that 8th and 9th and 10th rep is going to be really hard, and your muscles and your body and your mind are going to be saying, don't do that. And then keep doing it. And then you have to like shake off your legs, or you can barely walk when you get out of the gym. Like, hell yeah.
I can't make it down the stairs. I love it.
Man, I did. Yeah. You got to hold on to the handrails and like do dips down the stairs because your legs don't function. Bro, that's life, man. That's how it should be. So I will say that if you're in pain or you're injured, that's something different. And maybe you should look at changing up your training. Maybe you are going a little too hard. I got injured, my pec separated the tendons. And I think part of it was I was being stupid. And I also think another part of it was that I was exhausted. I was beat down. And part of that was because of my unhealthy lifestyle with the drinking. But I was also training like 4 to 6 days a week on top of other training. And I think I was just compromised in addition to being stupid. So both of those go hand in hand. And that's a problem. So if you're in pain and it's causing diminishing performance, then yes, reevaluate. But if you're in low level pain, good for you, man. That's awesome. Yeah. You're way better off than 95% of the other guys out there who are always comfortable, but miserable too. Right.
Yeah. You use the analogy of, you know, the things on our dashboard, right, in our vehicles telling us warnings. And that's how I see it too. Like I was doing hack squats the other day. I hate hack squats. I didn't even put plates. I'm the only dude there.
What is that? What's a hack squat?
It's leaning and it's a sled, but you're standing.
Got it. Yep. I know what you're talking about.
So, and I'll do those hack squats. I don't even put a plate on there. I'm doing 30 reps hack squats, not a plate. And I'm over there screaming like a girl because it is so hard. Yeah. But my point being is I was doing those hack squats and I felt pain underneath my knee. Not normal, right? Not a muscle.
That's different. And acute is different.
Yeah. And I'm like, no. Bad call. Where I go wrong though, is I'll be tempted to go, well, I'm not going to do hack squats. And last week I was like, no, I'm not going to do hack squats, but you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go over there in the open area. I'm going to grab a plate, put my heels on that plate, and I'm going to do air squats and maybe throwing 50 to 100. It's going to be miserable. They're going to be on fire, but I worked around it, right? Just like jiu-jitsu. I wouldn't say go less, but maybe change the way you're training, right? Use less aggression, focus on technique, get some movement in. Running's the same way. I could run and hurt myself. But once I start feeling some pain, I'm like, okay, wait a second. Am I heel striking a lot? How do I change my run? Are my legs aligned? Right? like use it as signals on the dashboard saying, hey, you know what, pull over, get some oil, get some gas, put some windshield washer fluid in your car, pivot and adjust a little bit, but don't stop.
Yeah. Good call.
Well, it's
Well
really
said.
your call. I just regurgitated something you said.
That's why I
Out
liked
of
it
the
so much.
hundreds of
Now
times
I
I've heard
know.
you share stories.
Now I
Oh
know
my
why I like
goodness.
it.
He's bringing up the dashboard story again. Here we go.
Rolling his eyes. I figured I
It's
didn't know what hack squats were, and now I know because I don't do half-ass shit in the gym.
I go heavy and I do 5 reps.
That's right.
Yeah, when you get
All
older,
right, what
they
else?
start, you got high reps. All right.
How old are you?
43.
Okay. Yeah. So 2 years older. Okay. So in 2 years. Okay.
All right. Will Trujillo, what is one thing or several things that have surprised you most about your sobriety?
Is this is Billy, right? Billy Trujillo from
Yeah.
the Iron Count. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Does it say Will on there?
Yeah, he put Will, or at least his
Oh.
Facebook says Will. I'm
Maybe
assuming
he's trying to mix
Billy.
it up on us. Yeah, I thought so
Yeah.
too. The one and only Billy. Maybe it's not the one and only. All right. What is it? What's the five? What's the most important
What
thing
is
that
the
surprised
one
me?
thing or several
one
things that have surprised you? Yeah, about sobriety.
I actually did a podcast like a week or two ago, I think. A Friday Field Notes. I'm actually gonna pull it up because I thought a lot about what it was, and I'll tell you what the 5 were. I should just be able to know them, but at the same time, I put a lot of thought into like what have I learned about myself through this? Let's see. What the heck? Where is it? What 5 months of sobriety has taught me? So these are like 9 things here. Number 1 is that I realized that you reach rock bottom when you stop digging the hole. Like, people will say, "Oh, I've hit rock bottom," but then they continue in that behavior, and it's like, well, then you haven't reached rock bottom because it's going to get worse.
Yeah.
So when you change the behavior, that's rock bottom. And I'm not saying that it's easy. You're always going to be comfortable even climbing yourself out, but you got to stop digging first. And that's what I'm trying to do. Number 2, I have a lot of emotional baggage that I was not aware of. And a lot of that stemmed from my childhood and some resentment. So I've been working through that. Number 3, I'm pretty good at hiding this behavior, which I need to be aware of because I can deceive myself and others fairly well. Good at it. No, I'm good at it.
Yeah.
And so I need to be careful of that because it's easy to pull the wool over my eyes and say, "Oh, no, you're good. You're good."
Yeah.
And then something happens externally and you're like, "Oh shoot, I'm not good. I just buried that for a while." I wish I would have recognized it earlier because then I could have done something about it earlier. So I got to be careful with that. Number 4, I am, well, this one sounds narcissistic, but it's true. I'm actually pretty incredible. Like, I know that sounds narcissistic, but I was pretty high functioning as an alcoholic. But I recaptured 3 to 4 hours every single day. And immediately as I recaptured that 3 to 4 hours, I mean, you should have seen the production at home, in the business. And so I'm pretty incredible. Again, I know that sounds so narcissistic, but I think it's important to know, like, hey, you're pretty good. Imagine what you can do with all that untapped potential. Number 5, alcohol does not make me a better person or a better anything. Because that's one of the lies I used to tell myself. I used to tell myself I'd do podcast drunk. And I used to tell myself, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to probably ask what you're about to say. Like, how did you feel like it made you better in some way?
When it came to podcasting, I felt like it loosened me up. And then I could ask different questions that maybe I wouldn't normally ask. Like social lubricant, really.
Like, yeah, the typical thing that teenagers use, right? It's like, oh, well, I'll drink because I'm more enjoyable to be around at a party. Definitely. Or I'll be willing to talk to people where I normally would be shy or whatever.
And I would even do that with my family because I tend to be a pretty high strung person. And I know that can be overwhelming for people at times, including my wife and kids. And I thought that drinking would loosen me up. And sometimes it did. a little too much. And other times I thought it was, but I was actually just wreaking havoc in my relationship with my wife and my kids. But I thought I was being fun, and it wasn't fun for anybody but me. So
totally.
Here's one that was really surprising. Number 6 is that people appreciate transparent leadership. So when I came out with this information, specifically in the Iron Council, I thought we were going to have mass exodus, fallout. People were going to be pissed, and people had a right that they had a right to be that way, actually.
Totally.
And that didn't happen at all. A little, I had a couple people, very little. In fact, one of those people who left actually reached back out to me. They're back in the Iron Council. Had reached back out to me, and they apologized. They had some experiences with alcohol in their young life with somebody else.
So you triggered them.
Yeah. And completely understandable. So I thought people were going to leave, but in fact, if anything, it's made me a better leader, and it's connected me to people on a deeper level because they see that I'm a human being and that I have my own faults. Number 7, trust is easy to destroy and very difficult to rebuild. That's not a surprise. I'm just in the midst of it right now. It's very easy to destroy and hard to rebuild. Number 8, your course of action will change when the pain of the current reality that you put yourself in is greater than the struggle of the change. So let me read that again, because I want to be really clear on that. Your course of action will change when the pain of the current reality is greater than the struggle of the change. So the pain I experienced by hurting people became so great, and I became so aware of it.
The change.
It was now easier for me to change than it was to continue to go through that.
Yeah.
And then the last one is number 9, that I've allowed the Spirit of God back into my life. I've always been, spiritual is not the right word. I've always been aware of God, but I'm slowly.
But that was hindering it.
Yes, and it's a barrier, right? It's just a wall. Yeah. And I'm deliberately and intentionally trying to bring that back into my life in a lot of ways for the first time. So those are some things. That's a podcast I did. That one came out January 6th. So about, 3 weeks ago or so.
Yeah. Esteban Ortiz, Ryan, I've seen or heard of some of the other sources around the internet that promote to help young men. I'm not talking about Jordan Peterson or David Goggins or anyone that you've usually promoted. I'm talking about influencers like on YouTube that promote red pilling, advice on women, and if they're for the streets or not. There's Andrew Tate. That's very controversial amongst the internet lately with some of the things that he says about a man as well. There just seems to be a lot of sources now that promote to help young men, and some take on the whole thing can be pretty extreme that I think will possibly hinder young men instead of helping them grow. So I would just like to hear your take on it all, due to you being more relatable in the sense of having more traditional things like a wife and family. Thank you in advance for what you do. Love the podcast and the advice that you give. So kind of the original question is really sources are on the internet around promoting, helping young men. Because right now, everything's kind of what we're talking about, or red pilling, and then it kind of stops there.
Yeah, I mean, there's pros and cons of the whole red pill idea. I think it wakes us up to the reality of life, the way, too. Sure. Yeah. And the way that women think. I think there's some valuable information there, the way women behave and think and act. You got to take it with a grain of salt because it's so broad and generalized and sweeping that it just doesn't apply to all women. It talks about all women are promiscuous, which isn't true. It does suggest that women are hypergamous, which I agree that they'll marry or partner up. I agree with that. Men are willing to partner across and down. Women are willing to partner across and up. Like, I agree with that. So what does that teach us? Well, does that mean women are bitches? No, it means you should be able to add value to the woman that you want in your life.
Yeah,
so level
you
up.
better level up. Yeah.
That's what I get. That's what I glean from it anyways, but I think there's a big part of the red pill movement that says, well, no, you don't have to level up. Those bitches need to blah, 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 blah. It's like,
yeah.
Okay.
It's
Well,
more
how
of
are
a
you going to
victim
change
approach to the circumstance?
And that's exactly what I wrote right here. That I take notes on this stuff, and I haven't read these comments, but I wrote right there as you were reading that question. I wrote, red pill promotes victimhood. Red pill taken to the extreme, I'll say, promotes victimhood. Women are this way.
Totally.
World is this way. They're out to get us. There's no good people. Marriage is this is that. And there's nothing you can do about it. And everybody is your enemy. And I don't agree with that. I don't agree with anything that paints me as a perpetual victim. Now, there's a difference between being a victim, I think, and maybe it's just semantics, so bear with me, being a victim and then being victimized. I know that there's situations where people are victimized. That's an act of aggression or violence or manipulation against another person. But being a perpetual victim is just blaming everything and every external circumstances and things that aren't even relatable to your situation as to why you're such a loser in life. That I don't agree with. You are not a loser. You are not a victim. Not all women are out to get you. The world is not a horrible place. And if you feel like it is, it's probably more an indication of the way that you show up rather than the way women or other people show up. I love women. I think that there are some phenomenal women. I think there's some evil women, just like men. But I think there's some phenomenal women who would love to be in a relationship with a man who adds value and contributes to society and has a mission and has purpose and is actively looking for those men. 100%. Because I hear from them.
Yeah.
I get messages from these women who want men like that.
So other resources, ideas, maybe even books for Esteban?
Order of Man is a great resource. Like you're in it, man. Dive fully in.
Yeah.
Like if you believe in what we're doing, ask yourself, what more could I be doing with regards to this movement? Are you in the Iron Council? No, maybe, I don't know, but let's assume you're not. Well, there's an avenue. Have you read Sovereignty?
Totally.
There's a book. Have you read Masculinity Manifesto? There's a book. Have you been to one of our events? There's a resource.
Yeah. Legacy event with boys. Yeah.
You're part of it, man. So dive all the way in. And I'm not saying ours is the only. Art of Manliness, totally. That's a great resource. I would say that's really good for practical life tools and things, planning, practical, like things around your house, skill sets, stuff like that. Very good resource, Art of Manliness.
And this is tough too, because I think sometimes, guys do it with us. It's all or none. Right. And if Ryan's not right all the time, then it's not a good resource. Right. Yeah. Like I surprisingly enough, I get messages and I had this guy message me online saying, Kip, the fact that you swear, I've lost all respect for you. I'm done listening to Order of Man.
What a ridiculous thing.
And I'm like, hey, first off, I like the feedback, but like I've lost all respect for you. I'm like, that seems extreme in my mind, but it reiterated the thought process that we have a tendency to go, well, there's only knowledge. And the knowledge is only good if all of it's like perfect, right? Rational Male, great book. Do I agree with all of it? No. The Boy Crisis, great book. Do I agree with all of it? No. But there's nuggets in knowledge in all things, and we need to be mature. And we need to realize that there's avenues of knowledge that we can latch on and grow and learn from, but it may not all be quote unquote perfect either.
Right. And that's actually how I feel. 100%.
Yeah.
That actually includes Andrew Tate as well. I like, because I think, did he mention Andrew Tate? I don't know if
he mentions Andrew Tate.
I like what the guy has to share a lot of the time.
He has some good stuff sometimes.
I'm like, that's true. Like I listen, I'm like, whoa, yeah, great point. And then also I listen, I'm like, that guy's an idiot. So
totally.
He's both. He's not God's gift to young men or ladies. And he's also not Satan. Like he's just a man who has some life experience that is different than mine, that is different than yours. And he sees some things through a lens that I hadn't thought of that I'm like, that's interesting. And then he sees some other things. I'm like, that's not interesting, or it is, but in all the wrong ways, just like me. So
Yeah. And it's a perfect example, Ryan. I'm sure if we went back 10 years and you were preaching what was right based upon your paradigm of 10 years ago, and you look back at something you said, you'd be like, yeah, I don't agree with that anymore.
Of course.
Because in that area of your life, that was true. That was the best advice. And you've grown, evolved, and guess what? It's probably not anymore. No different. And that's where I have some empathy, right? Because I see even Tate and I go, man, this guy's crazy. But I'm like, but it's where he's at. Give him 10 years and he'll probably look back at some of the things he said and think, yeah, that was stupid. That's
but
actually
the
not,
problem,
you know.
one of the problems is that the internet's not going to let you forget. So if Andrew Tate or me or anybody else says something, and then 5 years later, I say something at odds with what I just said, people will go back and they're like, well, 5 years ago, you believe this. Yeah, 5 years ago, I was a different man than I am right now. And if I think 100% the same as I did 5 years previously, what in the world have I been doing in the last 5 years?
Totally.
If like, so what? I'm supposed to have the same perception of the world as when I was 8 years old, according to your logic? That's asinine. Yeah. You should be changing constantly. Your perception of the world should be changing as you're listening to this podcast in real time. And I'm not saying that everything is going to be different because I said it, but now you have a new input that changes the equation.
Yeah.
Right? When I read a book, my life changes. Not drastically.
It should.
But I read it, I'm like, oh, yeah, Nietzsche. You know, I never considered that before. That's interesting. Do I agree with everything? No. But that's interesting. Can I apply that? Yeah, I can. And then I try to apply it in my life. Or I hear something and I'm like, you know, I don't agree with that. I don't like that. So then I don't apply it. But it's still in my head and I'm still thinking about it. And I'm still making decisions based on that information.
Totally. All right, 2 questions, rapid fire, because I know we have to wrap up. Levi Brickley, as a single man, 28 years old, with no kids and never married, what would be your advice on how to prepare for a family and the right woman?
I would focus on some key areas. So I would focus on and these aren't in order necessarily. And by the way, this is the same for married men too. So it actually works out pretty well.
Don't stop doing these things, Levi, after you get married, because these are the reasons why you got married.
Right. Number 1, I would focus on my physical health. So I would be at the gym every day or training jiu-jitsu or whatever. I don't care. Maybe it's running marathons, hiking, rucking, whatever your thing is, cycling, not soccer, but everything else is okay. So your physical health, nutrition obviously falls into that. So we have physical. I would also work on mental. And the way that I would work on mental is I would do things that are difficult and they might be physically related, like going to run a Spartan race, for example. That's physically related, but it's mental toughness and fortitude. But it might also be something that you're afraid of, like public speaking. Maybe you're really afraid of public speaking. And so you find a couple opportunities to go speak in public. Maybe you're afraid of confrontation. And so you decide to have a difficult conversation with a parent or a friend that you've needed to have for a couple of years. Or it might even be as simple as just asking for discounts everywhere you go because you don't like, it feels awkward and uncomfortable. And so you go do it and you force yourself into being a little bit more mentally resilient. So you have physical, mental, emotional. Really dial in your emotional well-being. And the best way that I've found to do that is to work with a therapist and journal. So when you're feeling away, happy, glad, mad, sad, angry, whatever, that you start documenting this and not just documenting how you feel, but why you feel it and where it comes from. So I'm mad because Kip didn't show up on time. And because Kip, why does that make me mad? Because I feel disrespected. You were, yes, you were. So, but in this hypothetical world, you were early today. So let's say you're late and I'm mad. Okay. Why? Why does that make you mad? Well, I feel disrespected. Why does it trigger me? Yeah. Okay. Well, now I feel disrespected. But why do I feel disrespected? Oh, because of this experience that I had in the past. So like you start to uncover it.
Where does that come from?
Yeah. Right. And then you can deal with it appropriately. So if I'm angry, and I should be a little upset about that if we agreed to it, like the expectation conversation, then I should tell you that. Like, hey, Kip, I'm here on time I need you to be here on time because I have a schedule and I respect my calendar and I respect yours. So I need you to respect mine too. Fair enough? Done. That goes back to the mental toughness because now we're talking about confrontation. Spiritual, get right spiritually with God, with the universe, with a higher power, whatever you want to call it. I don't like all that other stuff. Everybody talks about God. They just call him something different. The people who talk about the universe and the muse, they're talking about God, but for whatever reason, they're like, God, I can't say God. The universe is going to help me. No, God is going to help you. But if it makes you feel better to call it the universe, that's fine.
Power.
But it's God. So tap into that. What is my purpose here? What is his plan for me? What am I supposed to be doing? I'm divine. Like, how am I supposed to be showing up? How do I manifest it? How do I get closer to being that kind of person? And then the last is financial. Get your financial affairs in order. Get your money right. Get out of debt. Start learning how to make more money, more income, because that means you're adding more value. Man, you start dialing this stuff in, you're going to be a magnet to women. And you got to be careful with that because you're going to attract all sorts of women. Because what do women do? They partner up.
Partner up.
So that's okay. It's okay that they partner up.
Just make sure
that disparity is not too great. Because it could be very tempting when you're a high value man to find a low value woman because she's giving you attention. But if you're doing all those high value man type activities, high value women are also going to find you attractive. So just be selective and be careful with that.
Like it. Michael Gorham, how do we save our young men and sons? And can you paint the picture of the world we live in if we don't?
Rapid fire for sure.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's a quick question for 1 minute.
Can we revisit that? I do have to jet because I want to be respectful of my next guest time. Can we revisit that one?
Yeah, I there's a lot to do there. So we'll question number one next week, Michael.
Put a marker on that one because that's a good question, and I think I have some good answers. So let's hit that one first next week.
Okay, excellent. All right, gentlemen, you heard it. We got questions today from our Facebook group. Join us there, facebook.com/group/Order of Man, and join us at orderofman.com for all other things, whether that's, getting your swag from the store or learning more about the podcast or the Iron Council or connecting with us on social media and YouTube. As always, you can follow Mr. Mickler on the social media, Twitter and Instagram at Ryan Mickler.
That's it. All right, guys. Great questions today. Hopefully we gave you something to think about, and we will be back on Friday. Until then, go out there, take action, become the man you are meant to be.